My name is Lillian. I'm 36 years old, and I live in Napa Valley. The land tied to 3 generations of my family and vineyards stretching to the horizon. I didn't go into the wine business like my parents had hoped. Instead, I started a financial investment analysis company in San Francisco with nothing but an old laptop and a handful of small clients. 10 years later, I built a respected brand serving major investment funds and growing businesses. Every dollar I earned came from sleepless nights, endless deadlines, and staying sharp through dry spreadsheets. I never relied on my family. While my younger sister, Vanessa, was pampered endlessly by our parents, I had to do everything on my own. They paid for Vanessa's MBA at Yale, bought her a brand new Audi, and gave her a condo in downtown Los Angeles. As for me, I worked my way through school, scraping together every penny to keep my business afloat, and rent a small apartment in Oakland. I didn't complain, didn't blame anyone. I just thought, everyone has their own path. Then, one afternoon in March, while I was reviewing a quarterly report for a major client, my phone buzzed. It was my mom. Her voice was shaky. "Lillian, your dad had a serious spike in blood pressure. The doctor said he needs to avoid emotional stress, and the bank just sent a foreclosure notice on the vineyard." I froze. Windcrest Estate, the vineyard where I grew up, where my grandfather once guided my hand through rows of grapes, was about to be taken by the bank? My mother continued. "We don't know where to find the money. Vanessa's still interning. You're our only hope." I didn't ask questions. Within 48 hours, I wired $720,000, 0 cents. Every bit of savings from 10 years of grinding into the Windcrest Estate LLC account. No contract, no written agreement, just a message from my father. "Don't worry, sweetheart. We'll never forget what you've done." I returned to Windcrest the following weekend, standing among the vines just starting to sprout new leaves, the breeze whispering through the foliage like it carried our family's soul. My parents hugged me tightly. Vanessa cried and thanked me over and over. They promised I'd have a major role in management, that we'd rebuild the legacy together. I believed them. I truly believed blood wouldn't betray blood, that I wasn't just saving a vineyard, I was preserving 3 generations of history. I started drafting long-term plans, expanding distribution channels, optimizing production, and even reached out to an industry friend to help get Windcrest into a wine expo in San Diego. I didn't know Vanessa was online, posting selfies in the vineyard with captions like "Back to the Roots," as if she had built all of this. I had no idea the so-called important role my parents had promised would soon be redefined in a way I never could have imagined. The harvest celebration was held in the large courtyard behind the fermentation barn, the same space Vanessa and I used to play in as kids. Windcrest was lit up with warm golden string lights, oak barrels turned into banquet tables, and the air was thick with ripe grapes and sweet wine. I stood beside my mother, a glass of Pinot Noir catching the light as my father stepped up to speak. He wore the old turtleneck sweater he always saved for special occasions, holding the mic, eyes gleaming with rare pride. All eyes turned toward him as he tapped the mic and spoke in his deep, warm voice. "Thank you all for coming to Windcrest Estate's traditional harvest celebration. This year is special, not just because of the best crop in a decade, but because we're entering a new era." I smiled. My heart raced, not from nerves, but emotion. I thought, maybe he's about to officially name me as co-director, or at least recognize the part I played. "We're thrilled to announce," my father went on, "that the new CEO of Windcrest Estate will be Vanessa, our youngest daughter, who just completed her prestigious MBA at Yale." The courtyard erupted in applause and cheers. I stood frozen, wineglass suspended mid-air just inches from my lips. Vanessa stepped out from behind the podium in an elegant ivory satin dress, her hair softly curled, her smile radiant. She didn't look at me. She didn't have to. She knew I was there, frozen like a statue. I heard my mother giggle beside me, clapping out of polite reflex. No one noticed me. No one mentioned the $720,000, 0 cents, that had saved Windcrest from foreclosure. Not a single thank you. Not a single word of acknowledgement. Vanessa took the mic, her voice clear and confident. I'm honored to lead Windcrest Estate into a new era. With the knowledge and experience I've gained from my MBA, I'm confident I can take our family's wine brand further than ever before. Well, experience? I fought to keep my face neutral. While I was in the field with my dad checking soil pH for Syrah grapes and analyzing weather patterns, she was off taking artistic Instagram shots with her camera. I set down my wine glass and stepped away from the crowd, my chest heavy like it was pinned by stone. The cool night air calmed the heat rushing to my face. I pulled out my phone, rereading the last message from my dad 6 months ago. Don't worry, sweetheart. We'll never forget what you've done. Empty words. A promise that faded like wine vapors on damp wood. I opened my contacts and tapped on the name I had hoped I'd never need. Charlotte Mayers, a corporate litigation attorney who had once helped a friend of mine in a fraud case involving family. I need to see you. I typed. Urgent. It's about an undocumented investment with serious consequences. A reply came just minutes later. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., my office. Bring bank statements and anything relevant. I looked back at the courtyard, Vanessa beaming for the photographer, my mom tearing up beside her, my dad pouring wine for VIP guests. No one spared me a glance. The one who quietly kept Windcrest from crumbling. I turned away, hollow inside. I had lost everything. Trust, pride, and a sense of belonging to the place I once called home. The next morning, I walked into Charlotte Mayer's office, 14th floor of a glass building in downtown Santa Rosa. Her space wasn't flashy, but every detail was neat and professional. Charlotte, in her 40s, platinum hair pulled back, black-rimmed glasses, and sharp eyes that didn't miss a thing. I sat across from her and laid the folder on the table. The $720,000 0 cents wire receipt, bank confirmation emails, texts with my parents, and a breakdown of Windcrest's spending after receiving the funds. Charlotte flipped through the pages, her eyes scanning quickly like the legal code was memorized in her mind. No contract, no receipt, no loan notation, she said. Not judgmental, but clearly skeptical. Lillian, you really sent that much money without asking for anything in writing? I trusted them, I said, voice raw with anger and shame. I thought I was saving the family. Charlotte leaned back, drumming her fingers on the table. Trust is a luxury in anything involving money. But there's one chance. If there was a third-party witness who can testify to what was agreed. I suddenly remembered. When I worked with my parents on the financial recovery plan, the only other person there was Troy, the longtime head accountant at the Vineyard, known for staying neutral. Troy was there, I said. He heard my dad say, "Your investment will be protected and you'll have a role in management." I remember the awkward look on his face. Perfect, Charlotte nodded. I'll contact him. If he agrees, we'll have enough grounds to draft a formal demand for repayment. With interest. She pulled out a blank case folder and began drafting the letter. In it, she demanded that Windcrest Estate LLC repay the full $720,000, 0 cents, within 30 days, with an annual interest rate of 6%. The current market average. She also requested a detailed financial report from the day I transferred the funds. Lillian, Charlotte said as I signed the bottom of the letter, I need you to understand this. If they refuse to cooperate, I will move forward with legal action and request that the court freeze their assets for investigation. Are you ready for that? I clenched my fists. They'd left me no other choice. 3 days later, the letter was delivered to the attorney's office representing Windcrest. Just 1 day after that, Vanessa called me. Her voice was nearly screaming through the phone. What are you doing? Taking family matters to court? Are you out of your mind? No, Vanessa, I replied calmly. What's crazy is thinking I'd stay silent forever. You're going to destroy everything: Windcrest's reputation, my career, Dad and Mom's credibility. I let out a soft laugh. I'm only asking for what's mine. If that feels like destruction to you, maybe you should rethink your definition of integrity. The call ended with the sound of her furious, ragged breathing on the other end. That evening, Troy met me at a small cafe on the edge of town. He showed up in a slightly wrinkled shirt and brought a large envelope. Inside was a printed breakdown of Windcrest's expenditures from the past 6 months. I flipped to the first page and nearly dropped my coffee cup. Mercedes-Benz SUV, listed under Ingredient Transportation. Business class flight to Tuscany, noted as market research. Vanessa's MBA tuition, labeled as internal HR skill development. It felt like someone had slammed a final blow into the last bit of trust I was holding on to. I stayed quiet out of loyalty, Troy said in a low voice. But I can't anymore. I've written a formal statement, and I'm ready to submit it under oath. I nodded, eyes fixed on the final number at the bottom of the report. Total misused funds, $601,000, 0 cents. Almost the entire amount I sent had been misappropriated, not to save Windcrest, but to fund the extravagant lifestyle of my own family. I pulled out my phone and sent Charlotte a single message. Proof secured. Initiate Phase 2. 3 days after the meeting with Troy, I received an email from Charlotte with the subject line, "This is more serious than we thought." I opened the document she sent, and it felt like all the blood rushed to my head. Among the list of unusual expenses, beyond the Mercedes and Vanessa's MBA tuition, there were multiple transactions under the name of a completely unfamiliar entity, Windcrest Future Holdings, LLC. That name had never appeared in any business plans or internal documents I reviewed while working with my parents. I immediately called Charlotte. "This company was registered just 1 week after you transferred the money," she said, her voice low and firm. "The legal representative is your father. The second authorized party is Vanessa." I dropped into my chair, gripping the phone tightly. "They didn't just use your investment for personal spending," Charlotte continued. "They've also been quietly shifting assets, everything from grape presses to the wine-labeled trademark, into this new company. If they finish, the parent company you invested in will be nothing but an empty shell." I closed my eyes. A memory of my grandfather surfaced. He once told me, "A weak vine dies if it's not protected in time." Now I understood that he wasn't just talking about grapes. He was talking about legacy. "Charlotte, if I don't act now, I'll lose everything," I said. "It's not if anymore, Lillian. It's time to strike back." That afternoon, I met Troy at a small bar in Healdsburg, a place no one in my family ever visited. He came in with a heavy expression, carrying a laptop and a USB drive. "I reviewed the accounting system," he said, "and you need to see this." Troy pulled up detailed financial spreadsheets and pointed at each line. I saw countless market research expenses that were actually travel costs, HR expenses that were allowances for Vanessa and her boyfriend, a man who had never worked a single day at Windcrest. But the worst was the asset transfer file. "Here," Troy pointed at the screen. "These are the documents transferring ownership of the best 3 Vineyard lots, plots 4, 6, and 8, to Windcrest Future Holdings, officially labeled as Restructuring for Strategic Development." I stared at the note like it could ignite from my glare. Those lots were the heart of Windcrest. If they were moved, the parent company would no longer be able to produce wine at a quality level necessary to stay competitive. "There's more," Troy said quietly, pulling out a folder from his bag. "I found a draft contract sent to their attorney. They're planning to merge Windcrest Estate into holdings, then declare the original company bankrupt to wipe out your investment." My mouth went dry. "Oh, if they succeed," I said slowly, "I won't just lose the money. I won't even have legal standing to sue." Troy nodded. "Why are you helping me?" I asked, looking him straight in the eye. He hesitated. then said softly, "Because I owed your grandfather. And because no one in your family deserves to hold on to what he left behind." I reached for his hand and gave it a light squeeze. I won't let Windcrest get swallowed alive. I won't let trust die under greed and deceit. That same night, I sent all the documents to Charlotte. She called back within 10 minutes, and this time her voice was sharper and more resolute than ever. "They didn't just cross an ethical line. They may have violated federal law. You now have evidence of financial fraud, asset concealment, and breach of fiduciary duty. We're not just sending demand letters anymore." So what's next? We prepare a case for the SEC and federal authorities. At the same time, we'll file an emergency motion to freeze all transactions and assets linked to Holdings LLC. I sat in my Santa Rosa apartment, staring at my laptop screen. The numbers, the text, the land plots where I once learned to prune vines with my grandfather, they all stared back at me. My hands trembled slightly, but my mind had never felt clearer. 3 days after Charlotte sent the formal demand, warning that we'd escalate to the SEC within 72 hours without a response, I got a call from Vanessa. Her name flashed on the screen. I hesitated for a second. Before I could answer, the call went to voicemail. Her message lasted less than 30 seconds, but her voice was panicked and furious. "Lillian, you can't do this. Dad had to be rushed to the hospital last night. His blood pressure spiked. Do you even realize you're pushing the entire family off a cliff? Call me back now." I didn't call back. Instead, I opened my laptop and checked Charlotte's latest email. The subject line was simple: chain reaction initiated. Attached were copies of emails from 3 major commercial banks, all denying Windcrest Estates' emergency loan requests. One section, highlighted in yellow, read, "Financial records unclear, potential subject of federal investigation." It didn't feel triumphant. I felt justified. That was all. The next morning, I went to Charlotte's office for an emergency meeting. She had prepared the court filing to freeze all transactions related to Windcrest Future Holdings and to block the transfer of any assets tied to the new entity. Meanwhile, the SEC had emailed to confirm they had received the complaint and supporting evidence. "You can't back down now," Charlotte said, her eyes steady. "They're going to try everything: guilt, threats, emotional manipulation. Be ready." I nodded. I've been trained for that my whole life. A few hours later, while working at a cafe near the office, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was my father. He picked up. "Lillian," he began, his voice raspy. "Do you know your mom's been crying every night?" I stayed silent. "We know we made mistakes, but did you really have to blow this up like this? Filing with the government, dragging Windcrest into the spotlight." I answered calmly. "I haven't sent anything to the press, but if you keep avoiding responsibility, I can't make promises." He sighed. "We're trying to raise the money. We've contacted the banks, reached out to old investors, but the moment they hear the SEC is involved, they back off. Because they don't want to be part of a mess," I said. "And you know exactly why it became one." "Vanessa is falling apart," he whispered. "She hasn't eaten since yesterday. Can you come to dinner tonight? We need to talk this through." I paused for a few seconds, then replied, "Unless Charlotte is there, there will be no conversation. At this point, it's business, not family." He hung up. No further words. That night, Troy texted me. "Local bank just denied Windcrest's credit extension. Vanessa begged the branch manager in tears. Office gossip is spreading fast. It's getting ugly." At the same time, Charlotte informed me that Windcrest's attorney had officially responded, offering an upfront payment of $250,000, 0 cents, with the rest to be paid over 2 years. I looked at the number and exhaled deeply. "Not acceptable," I texted back. "Full $720,000, 0 cents plus interest, within 10 days, or we file." She replied with a nod emoji. The next morning, I was in an online meeting with a potential investor when someone knocked hard on my door. I opened it to find my mother standing there, worn out, pale, clutching a folder. She didn't speak. She simply held it out to me. Inside was a list of personal assets they had pledged. The family home, a parcel of land in her name since before marriage, and her wedding ring of 40 years. "This is what we can pull together," she said, her eyes wet. "It's not the full amount, but at least half." They've looked at her, feeling both cold and hollow. "I don't need your assets," I said slowly. "I need justice. If the family doesn't have the money, then let the law decide." She didn't reply. She simply turned and walked away, like a shadow that had lost its light. And I knew the game had changed. It was no longer about money. It was about honor. Sitting in my small apartment in Santa Rosa, I stared at my laptop screen. A real estate listing showed a vast vineyard, sunlit rows stretching over rich, untouched soil. In the corner of the photo was a line I couldn't look away from. Stone Creek Vineyard, 190 pristine acres, directly across from Windcrest Estate. Unobstructed views. I clicked to view more. Stone Creek had been Windcrest's biggest rival for 3 decades, until the aging owner started selling off land. From its highest point, you could see the entire Windcrest property, including the fermentation building and the newly built guest area. My heart pounded. This was the leverage I needed. I texted Charlotte immediately. "Stone Creek is up for sale. I want to move fast." She called me back in 5 minutes. "Lillian, are you sure?" she asked, her voice lower than usual. "This will strike right at their pride." "Exactly what I want," I answered firmly. "If they thought I'd roll over and forget, it's time they realize I'm not that timid little girl anymore." We agreed to send one final warning letter to Windcrest, this time with a photo taken from the top of Stone Creek looking down on their estate. A message that didn't need words. That afternoon, I drove to meet Ryan Calloway, the agent representing Stone Creek. He was in his 50s, with salt and pepper hair, sharp eyes, and a friendly demeanor. "I've heard about you," Ryan said the moment we shook hands. "And I've got to admit, I admire your fighting spirit." I smiled. "I'm not here to start a war, Mr. Calloway. I'm here to rebuild the right way." But all he could think about was the thought of having me as his daughter. Ryan nodded thoughtfully as I laid out my plan. Expanding production, focusing on premium grape varieties, offering tours with immersive experiences. Something Windcrest had always struggled to execute. "You've got the potential to turn this place into a small empire," he said. "And Windcrest will have no choice but to take notice." "That's the plan," I said without hesitation. We signed a memorandum of agreement. I committed to putting down 10% of the purchase price if no legal disputes arose within 20 days. Back home, I immediately emailed Charlotte with all the related documents. Within an hour, she had drafted and sent a second letter to Windcrest's attorney. The message was crystal clear. If Windcrest did not repay the full amount of my investment plus interest within 72 hours, I would finalize the acquisition of Stone Creek and launch a directly competing brand. At the same time, I would submit all evidence of financial misconduct and asset diversion to the SEC. No threats, just facts. Sharp and undeniable. 20 minutes after Charlotte sent the letter, my phone lit up nonstop. A familiar number. Dad. I didn't answer. A minute later, Mom. Still no answer. Next was Vanessa. I silently put my phone on silent and let the screen flash again and again. That night, as I sat by the window looking out at the Napa Valley night sky, a message came in. From Troy. "Emergency meeting at Windcrest. Your dad and Vanessa are arguing. Badly. They're scrambling to stop you from buying Stone Creek." I leaned back in my chair, a faint smile on my lips. I wasn't on the defensive anymore. I was in control. And they knew it. The next morning, while I was reviewing the renovation blueprints for Stone Creek, Charlotte called. Her voice nearly bursting through the phone. "We've got the result, Lillian. They signed." I jumped to my feet, heart pounding. "Signed what?" "The loan agreement with Redwood Bank. To repay your full investment. principal and interest. I stayed silent for a moment. After all the months of silence, mind games, betrayal, and pain, finally, something real. Charlotte continued, slowly. $720,000. 0 cents principal plus 6% interest, just as you demanded. Total? $761.20. The bank only approved it after receiving your SEC notice. They didn't dare wait another day. I exhaled, a mixture of relief and bitterness. So, they chose reputation over keeping their word. Exactly, Charlotte said. They'd rather mortgage assets and temporarily give up shares than let this blow up in the media. You won, Lillian. I sat down, eyes still on the screen displaying Stone Creek, where I would begin again. And this time, no one could take it from me. That same afternoon, I received a message from an unknown number. Just one short line. The money's been transferred. Dad. No apology. No explanation. Just 3 cold words. Like the way they'd treated me all this time. 2 hours later, Charlotte confirmed the funds were in. I opened my banking app and watched the balance tick up past $761,000, 0 cents. Yet, I didn't feel joy. For the first time in my life, I could say, I owed nothing to anyone in that family. 3 days later, I returned to Stone Creek to sign the final contract. Ryan Calloway smiled as we shook hands, his voice full of respect. You're the strongest woman I've ever met in this business. I just don't let anyone bury my dreams, I replied. We both signed the contract. Using the returned money from Windcrest, I placed the down payment to purchase all 190 acres. I also officially became the owner of the Stone Creek Reserve brand, a label that had once won multiple national awards. I walked outside, standing among the endless rows of vines, and took a deep breath. The wind blew through my hair, carrying the scent of earth, grapes, and freedom. That evening, Vanessa showed up unexpectedly at the gate of my new office. Her eyes were shadowed, her messy bun a far cry from her usual polished look. Can we talk? She asked, her voice lower than usual. I folded my arms. About what? I know. I was wrong. This all went too far. But you don't have to become the enemy of the whole family. I looked at her, not with anger, not with resentment, just emptiness. I'm not the enemy, I said. I just stopped being the one who gets hurt. You got your money, you've got Stone Creek. You won. Why won't you just let Windcrest go? I gave a faint smile. Because Windcrest should have been mine. Not for the money. Because I once gave up everything. My career. My life. To save it. And you and our parents chose a different path. Vanessa was silent. After a pause, she whispered, Dad hasn't spoken to anyone since signing the papers. Good, I said. He should spend that time reflecting on what he did. She turned and walked away without another word. I walked into the office where Troy was waiting with the new development layout for Stone Creek. He looked at me and smiled. Welcome home, Lillian. I nodded. I could finally feel I was stepping into a new chapter, one where I wrote the rules. 3 weeks after the Stone Creek transfer was finalized, I renamed the vineyard Solara Ridge, a name that symbolized light, renewal, and everything I'd lost and reclaimed to get here. From the west hilltop, I could see the rows of grapes at Windcrest, small, tired, and now just a faint shadow of the dream they once claimed. I didn't look at it with hate. I looked with resolve. I called Troy, who had resigned from Windcrest right after the transfer, and officially offered him the CFO position at Solara Ridge. He was surprised I chose him first. But to me, there was never a doubt. I need someone who knows the old mistakes, so we don't repeat them, I said. Troy didn't just say yes. He brought a full network with him, a grape-growing expert from Oregon, a production consultant from Sonoma, and a branding designer who'd worked with award-winning wineries. We started from zero. Or nearly. Good land, ideal climate, an irrigation system that needed overhaul and outdated equipment. But I wasn't afraid. I had built a financial company from a studio apartment barely 400 square feet. Building a wine brand? It was a challenge, but one I chose. I wasn't just making wine, I was telling a story. One of betrayal and rebirth, loss and triumph. And I'd let the bottles speak for me. I named our first product line The Second Harvest, a symbol of things once thought lost, now returned stronger. The label was minimalist. A hand rising from the soil, gripping a ripe, vibrant cluster of grapes. On the first day of harvest hiring, I stood in the vineyard in a simple shirt, cloth hat, sleeves rolled up, working beside everyone else. No one knew I used to be the daughter of Windcrest's owner. No one needed to. Here, I wasn't Lillian from the Roberts family. I was just Lillian of Solera Ridge. That evening, I returned to my temporary office inside the fermentation barn, drafting the expansion plan. I wanted my wine in Napa's top restaurants, then San Francisco, and eventually in regional wine expos. Charlotte stopped by one late afternoon, bringing a bottle of Chardonnay from a former client and a folder of documents. "Congratulations to Solera Ridge," she smiled. "And to the woman brave enough to cut family ties to protect her dignity." I poured the wine into 2 clear plastic cups and clinked with her. "I don't think I lost a family," I said. "I think I just found myself." The next day, I got an email from a major distributor in Los Angeles offering a partnership if I could supply 200 cases for the upcoming holiday season. I called an emergency team meeting. Everyone was stunned. Solera Ridge hadn't even finished the first batch. I looked around and said with confidence, "We'll do it. Not just 200 cases. We'll make them remember our name with the very first taste." Troy stepped beside me, his voice low but strong. "Windcrest just released an internal report. They're cutting back on marketing. Looks like the bank's holding tighter control than we thought." I didn't respond. I just looked toward the hill, where the rows of vines on the other side of the valley continued growing under outdated, rigid management that no longer had room for change. One autumn morning, after the last grapes were harvested, and Solera Ridge's first batch was aging in oak barrels, I received a package. No sender, just a handwritten address in a familiar script I hadn't seen in nearly a year. It was from my parents' house. I opened it. Inside was an old leather-bound notebook, the cover worn, the cloth tie frayed. I recognized it instantly, like it was part of me. My grandfather, Charles Roberts' Vineyard Journal, the foundation of Windcrest. I opened it. The smell of old paper mixed with earth, ink, and sun spilled out. The yellowed pages detailed his grape blending formulas, how he tracked soil pH, even hand-drawn maps of seasonal wind patterns across the hills. In between were personal notes. "A vine is like a person. Neglected, it withers. Tended with care, it revives." Tucked between 2 blank pages at the back was a folded sheet. I opened it and saw my father's handwriting. Slightly shaky, but clear. "Dear Lillian, I've been rereading this journal. In every line I see you. The precision, the patience, the strength. Maybe I clung too tightly to what I thought was right by old standards, and forgot that some people need to break the mold to grow. I'm not good with apologies. But this journal was your grandfather's treasure, and now it belongs with the one who truly understands its worth." "Dad," I folded the paper and placed it gently over my heart. No grand speeches. No tears. Just that one small gesture was enough to know that even if he couldn't say it, he understood. Even if it came too late. The following spring, the first batch of the second harvest officially debuted at the North Bay Wine Expo. Critics described it as balanced, complex, and unexpectedly profound, almost as if they were describing the journey I had taken. Vanessa was no longer CEO of Windcrest. The bank required the appointment of a neutral director, and since then, she had mostly stepped away from operations. Troy heard she had moved into the city and enrolled in a short course on art and design. The first time in her life she had done something not tied to our parents' expectations. My mother remained silent. Not a single message since the day she handed me the papers, pledging the old house. But I understood. Some distances can't be mended with words, and I no longer needed them to move forward. I chose to build a future, not to rebuild the past. Solera Ridge sold out its entire first run of 2,500 bottles. Our second product line, Legacy Bloom, was named by Troy, honoring the journey of old legacies blossoming into something new. One late afternoon, I stood in the vineyard, near the edge where the lavender bloomed purple along the fence. In my hand was a glass of wine made from the very grape my grandfather had once nurtured first. Cabernet Franc. A soft breeze drifted through. I closed my eyes, listening to the wind, the earth, and deep within me, my grandfather's voice echoed, "If you care for it the right way, a vine will never betray you." I set the glass down, pulled an old notebook from my jacket pocket, turned to the final page, and wrote a new line. A legacy begins again in the place once rejected. And now, more than ever, I understood. I didn't need to inherit a vineyard to build something extraordinary. All I needed was to trust myself. 1 year after officially acquiring Solera Ridge, what had once been a quiet nightmare had become the solid foundation of the road I now walked. Every morning, as I stepped out of the small office converted from an old barn, I saw dozens of workers tending to each vine with skilled hands and genuine care. They weren't just working for a paycheck. They believed in what Solera Ridge stood for, a brand born from ruin, led by resilience and trust. I used to think I needed my family's recognition to feel worthy, but it was when they turned their backs, when I was pushed out of their perfect picture, that I finally saw myself clearly. No longer the forgotten shadow of Vanessa, no longer the silent supporter behind the scenes, but a woman of intellect, strength, and unwavering integrity. I didn't choose revenge. I chose justice. I didn't shout. I used the law and the truth. I didn't destroy. I rebuilt. What struck me most was this. I wasn't alone in being underestimated by family. After the Legacy Bloom launch, an older woman came to meet me. She introduced herself as Nora, a former family winery operator who had been pushed out by her son after refusing to fund his $1 million idea. "I read your story in the paper," she said, calm but firm. "You reminded me of something I forgot, that no one gets to decide your worth but you." I smiled and gently held her hand. "You may have lost a family," I said, "but you still have an entire path ahead of you, just like I did." After that conversation, I launched a series of events at Solera Ridge called Reclaiming Roots, a space for those hurt by family and business to share stories, learn their legal rights, connect with experts, and reclaim their voice. It wasn't just about wine. I wanted Solera Ridge to be a place of empowerment. Every time I step into the vineyard, I remember what my grandfather once taught me as a child. Don't let vines grow aimlessly. You have to tie them to a frame. Guide them toward the light. Only then will they bear true fruit. I don't think he was just talking about grapes. He was talking about people. I had to withstand false promises and emotional manipulation disguised as family. But the moment I stopped staying silent, I truly began to grow. And strangely enough, the moment I stopped trying to earn a place in someone else's heart, I found respect from an entire community. Charlotte once told me, "Lillian, you didn't win just because you were right. You won because you didn't let anger cloud your mind." I never saw myself as noble. I only knew that if I had responded with chaos, I would have become exactly who they believed I was. Weak, reactive, and easy to erase. But I chose another path, the path of justice. Lillian's story is a powerful reminder that justice isn't just written on paper. It's built through clarity and courage. When betrayed by her own family, she didn't seek revenge, but pursued a lawful fight to defend her dignity and reclaim what was rightfully hers. From pain, she created a new legacy, Not just a wine brand, but a symbol of self-respect, independence, and the strength to stand against injustice, even when it comes from the people closest to us. What do you think about Lillian's journey? What would you do in her shoes? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful and heartfelt family stories.